FBI Director Kash Patel sat before Congress, unaware of his impending downfall. Repentant Madeleine Dean's notes contained the ammunition to expose not just the man, but his weaponization of America's premier law enforcement agency. The tension was palpable as witnesses sensed what was coming. In moments, the nation would witness the textbook definition of a public meltdown. Raw and revealing a temperament wholly unsuited for power. Stay with us. Democracy's accountability is about to collide with unchecked authority. The cavernous hearing room of the Rayburn House office building hummed with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long rectangular shadows across the deep blue carpet. The wood-paneled walls seemed to absorb the murmurs of staffers and journalists who filled the gallery seating. Television cameras stood at attention along the perimeter, their red recording lights blinking like mechanical heartbeats. The members of the House Judiciary Committee sat elevated on a curved dais, looking down upon the witness table where FBI Director Kash Patel waited. The physical architecture of the room itself was a manifestation of power dynamics. Those who questioned positioned literally above those who must answer. Director Patel, newly confirmed and controversial, sat with perfect posture in his tailored navy suit. His face betrayed nothing, a mask of professional calm, though those who watched closely noticed his right index finger tapping silently against the polished wooden table. The microphone before him loomed like a sentinel. Behind him sat a row of aides, notebooks open, pens poised. Repentant Madeleine Dean, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, sat midway across the dais. Her silver-framed glasses caught the light as she reviewed her notes one final time. Unlike some of her colleagues who performed for the cameras with theatrical gestures, Dean's demeanor suggested a prosecutor methodically preparing to present damning evidence. Her shoulders squared with determination as she waited for her allotted time. The chamber fell silent as the committee chair recognized Repentant Dean. The sound system captured the subtle intake of breath before she began what would become a defining moment in this administration's oversight battles. Repentant Dean adjusted her microphone with deliberate precision, the soft scrape echoing through the hushed chamber. Her voice, clear and measured, carried the weight of grave concern rather than political theatrics. She began by referencing the president's FBI budget request. Not the full document, but what she sardonically termed the skinny or Osembic request. The room registered her wordplay, a subtle mockery of an administration that prided itself on its communications. The Congresswoman's eyes narrowed slightly as she quoted directly from the document, emphasizing with careful enunciation the phrase, "undoing the weaponization of the FBI," as an administration priority. Her tone carried the irony she intended to explore, that the very administration claiming to unweaponize was, in her view, orchestrating the most aggressive weaponization in modern history. Director Patel remained motionless as Repentant Dean methodically constructed her narrative. His face betrayed nothing, though a muscle along his jawline visibly tensed as she referred to the president's revenge tour. The phrase hung in the air, resonating with both sides of the aisle for entirely different reasons. To the director's supporters, it signified necessary correction. To his critics, dangerous retribution. Repentant Dean's cataloging of presidential actions flowed with practiced precision, targeting individuals, universities, law firms with executive orders, using ICE to disappear citizens without due process, ignoring a unanimous Supreme Court order. With each item on her list, her voice grew not louder but more pointed, like a surgeon identifying multiple symptoms of a dangerous condition. The room grew perfectly still when she mentioned the weekend interview, where the president expressed uncertainty about his obligation to uphold the Constitution. Several Republican members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their faces studies in conflict between party loyalty and constitutional oath. Director Patel's expression darkened imperceptibly. His hands, previously resting loosely atop prepared notes, now pressed flat against the table's surface, as if bracing for what would come next. Meltdown reached beneath her desk and produced a hardcover book. Director Patel's Own Government Gangsters. She held it aloft briefly, ensuring the cameras captured the moment. The book's cover featured a quote from the president himself, calling it a brilliant roadmap and a blueprint. The director's expression flickered momentarily between pride and wariness. The Congresswoman's tone shifted as she addressed the appendix, a list of names that critics had dubbed an enemies list. She acknowledged that Patel would reject this characterization, preemptively neutralizing his defense by pivoting to focus not on his intent, but on the president's interpretation of the document. Throughout this exposition, Director Patel maintained his composure, though observers noted the increasing rigidity of his posture. His breathing had become more deliberate, his eyes fixed on Meltdown with an intensity that suggested he was mentally countering each point while awaiting his turn. The gallery reacted with subtle movements, journalists scribbling notes, staffers exchanging glances, photographers adjusting lenses to capture the mounting tension between questioner and witness. The weight of history pressed down on the proceedings as Meltdown mentioned, almost as an aside, Patel's children's book, The Plot Against the King, an allegorical retelling of the Russia investigation that had been embraced by the administration. The true gravity of her questioning emerged as she connected the dots between names in the blueprint and subsequent executive orders and FBI investigations. Her voice carried genuine alarm as she recounted the FBI's arrest of a Wisconsin judge who had simply asked ICE officials for proper judicial rather than administrative warrants. "A functioning democracy does not lock up judges," she declared, the words echoing in the chamber like a warning bell. Several committee members nodded solemnly, while others stared stonily ahead, the partisan divide physically manifest in their reactions. Director Patel's face had transformed now, the professional mask slipping to reveal flashes of indignation. His eyes narrowed, his mouth tightened at the corners. His aides behind him exchanged concerned glances, sensing the brewing storm. The hearing room's atmosphere thickened as Meltdown transitioned to a more personal note. With solemn dignity, she referenced her role as an impeachment manager during the president's second impeachment. A sad, solemn duty, as she described it. The contrast between her grave demeanor and what she called Director Patel's childlike giddiness to carry out presidential revenge was stark and deliberate. Her final question landed with the precision of a carefully aimed arrow. "When can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?" The question hung in the air, breathtaking in its implications. It was not merely rhetorical. It carried the weight of genuine concern from a public servant who had stood against a president now returned to power with apparent vengeance on his agenda. The gallery remained frozen, cameras capturing every nuance of the moment. Democratic colleagues along the dais registered expressions ranging from grim satisfaction at the directness of the question to genuine concern for their colleague. Republican members appeared caught between discomfort and defensive postures. Director Patel's transformation was now complete. The professional demeanor that had characterized his entrance had evaporated entirely. His face flushed visibly, and his body language shifted from contained to coiled, like a spring under increasing pressure. When he leaned toward his microphone to respond, the tension in the room was palpable. Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. The director's voice carried an intensity that contrasted sharply with Repressil Dean's measured tones. His emphasis on me revealed the personal nature of his response. No longer the dispassionate law enforcement official, but a man who felt personally aggrieved. His words came faster now, less structured than his opening statement had been. The careful preparation that had characterized his earlier testimony gave way to emotional reaction. You want to know how and why. You want to know what I'm doing to fix it. The staccato cadence of his speech betrayed growing agitation. Then, abruptly, he shifted gears. Let me move on. But rather than moving to a new topic, he circled back to the book at the center of the controversy. Well, you should read the book, because there's no enemies list in that book. His voice rose slightly on the word no, the defensive nature of his response evident to everyone in the chamber. The gallery stirred as Director Patel continued, his words now flowing with the fervor of someone who felt vindicated by his own reasoning. He characterized the appendix not as an enemies list, but as a catalog of people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people. In his framing, the list was not about retribution, but accountability. With unmistakable derision, he suggested Repressil Dean, give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it. The comment crossed from professional disagreement into personal challenge, the change in tone not lost on committee members or observers. Repressil Dean's response was immediate and curt. I won't be doing that. Her refusal was delivered with the calm certainty of someone uninterested in being baited into emotional territory. Director Patel could not resist a parting shot. That's their loss. The childishness of the retort hung in the air, undercutting his authority more effectively than any criticism from across the aisle could have done. Repressil Dean smoothly redirected to matters of record, her voice taking on the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence. She referenced Director Patel's Senate confirmation hearings, where he had repeatedly denied involvement in the firing of FBI officials who prosecuted January 6th insurrectionists, individuals the director had referred to as political prisoners, despite their documented violence against Capitol Police. The chamber grew utterly still as she mentioned multiple whistleblowers who had come forward, the implication of perjury hanging in the air without her needing to state it directly. Democratic members leaned forward slightly, while Republican members shifted uncomfortably, the allegation too serious to dismiss with partisan ease. Representative Dean continued methodically, noting that Director Patel had claimed unfamiliarity with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite appearing on Peters' podcast 8 separate times. The repetition of 8 times landed with particular emphasis, the disbelief in her voice palpable. Her question, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity, was devastating in its simplicity. It offered no escape route, suggesting either cognitive deficiency or dishonesty as the only possible explanations. Director Patel's response marked the true meltdown point of the hearing. His composure shattered completely as he launched into a counterattack. We should worry more about your lack of candor. The professional distance between witness and questioner collapsed entirely as he turned accusatory. You're accusing me of committing perjury. Tell the American people how I broke the law and committed a felony. His voice rose with each word, the microphone capturing every nuance of his building rage. Have the audacity to actually put the facts forward instead of lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second donation hit. The personal attack, suggesting Repressil Dean was performing for campaign donations, crossed a line rarely breached in congressional hearings, Committee members on both sides appeared stunned at the breakdown of decorum. The chairman shifted forward slightly, prepared to intervene if necessary, while staffers behind Director Patel exchanged alarmed glances, one making a subtle calming gesture that went unheeded. Repro Dean, rather than matching the director's emotional escalation, maintained her composure with practiced skill. "The answer is both," she stated simply, refusing to be drawn into the emotional tempest Director Patel seemed intent on creating. Her calm response stood in stark contrast to his outburst, creating a visual and auditory demonstration of the temperamental differences between them. The gallery's attention shifted perceptibly, now focused on Representative Dean's restraint, rather than the director's emotional display. "I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best." Her pivot to the welfare of the Bureau's agents was masterful, positioning herself as the defender of the institution while implying the director was failing its people. Representative Dean continued, listing what these agents deserved: extraordinary independence, freedom from the fears of being investigated, and the ability to come forward to make sure they're doing their job. Each phrase carried the implicit accusation that Director Patel was providing none of these necessities. Then, with the skill of an experienced questioner, she introduced a new line of inquiry about the budget, noting the significant discrepancy between the president's request and the director's own proposal. "You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?" The question was brilliant in its construction. It highlighted potential division between the director and the president he supposedly served so loyally, while also forcing him to choose between defending his bureau's needs and showing deference to presidential authority. Director Patel, still visibly agitated, attempted to regain control of the narrative. "I'll do what I've always done, and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld, and the FBI has never weaponized." His words came rapidly, a defensive barrage that suggested he recognized the trap, but could not find a graceful exit. Then, unable to resist, he added, "Maybe you should do the same." The childish retort undercut whatever professional recovery he might have managed with his previous statement. Representative Dean, sensing vulnerability, pressed her advantage with a devastating follow-up. "So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?" The question was a masterful corner, forcing the director to either criticize the president or defend a statement widely condemned across the political spectrum. Director Patel, recognizing the no-win scenario, abandoned any pretense of professional engagement. "If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside." The non-sequitur response betrayed complete communicative breakdown, suggesting the director had run out of substantive replies and was now simply lashing out. The gallery stirred at this extraordinary display from the nation's top law enforcement official. Journalists furiously took notes, photographers captured the moment, and committee members from both parties appeared stunned at the collapse of decorum and professionalism. Representative Dean, recognizing that further engagement would only diminish the power of what had already transpired, concluded with quiet dignity, "I thank you. I yield back again. This is an unserious moment, sadly for the FBI. I yield back." Her final assessment, an unserious moment, landed with particular weight given the director's behavior. It was not merely a criticism of his responses, but a judgment on his fitness for the role, delivered not with matching emotion, but with the somber disappointment of someone who expected better from an institution she respected. As Representative Dean yielded back her time, the chamber remained in a state of suspended animation. The exchange had lasted just minutes by the clock, but its implications would reverberate far beyond the hearing room. What had transpired was not merely a contentious oversight hearing, but a revealing glimpse into the temperament of a man entrusted with extraordinary power over American citizens' lives and liberties. Committee members shifted in their seats, processing what they had witnessed. Democratic members exchanged glances that communicated shared concern, while Republican members appeared divided, some clearly uncomfortable with the director's display, others preparing to defend him regardless of his behavior. For the watching public, the contrast could not have been clearer. Reprendor Dean, regardless of one's position on her politics, had conducted herself with the restraint and focus expected of elected officials. Director Patel had revealed a temperament ill-suited to his position's grave responsibilities. Reactive, personalized, unable to maintain professional composure under questioning. As the chairman recognized the next questioner, the hearing continued, but the energy in the room had fundamentally changed. What had been revealed could not be unseen. The mask had slipped, exposing not just one man's temperament, but the broader implications of entrusting powerful institutions to individuals chosen for loyalty rather than temperament or qualification. In the days to come, the exchange would be replayed on news programs, analyzed by legal experts, and discussed in homes across America. But in that moment, as the hearing room adjusted to the aftershocks of what had transpired, a sobering reality settled over the proceedings. The institution created to protect Americans from threats was itself in the hands of a man who viewed legitimate oversight as personal attack. For a nation founded on checks and balances, the implications were as clear as they were disturbing. The weaponization Reprendor Dean had described was not theoretical, but manifested in the very person sent to deny its existence. The future of American justice hung in the balance, not as abstract concept but as daily reality for citizens who must live under institutions led by those who cannot tolerate being questioned. As the hearing continued, a fundamental question lingered in the air, unspoken but unavoidable. In a system designed around accountability, what happens when those who must be held accountable refuse to accept the very premise of oversight? The answer would determine not just the fate of one agency or administration, but the enduring promise of American democracy itself.